My name is Marcus. I am 46 years old, or at least I was 46, when the life I thought I owned was ripped out from under me. I need to tell you this, because what I saw isn't just about what happens when you die. It is about how we are living right now, today. I saw a place that terrified me, not because of demons or fire, but because it looked exactly like the inside of my own mind. I had a near-death experience that didn't start with angels. It started with a warning that I almost didn't survive to deliver. I want to be clear right from the start. I was not a religious man. I wasn't an atheist, strictly speaking, but I was indifferent. I believed in the stock market. I believed in quarterly projections. I believed in the architecture of a good deal. If you had asked me about the soul or the afterlife, I would have laughed and poured you a drink. That was my world. Concrete, steel, cash flow. I was a structural engineer turned developer, and I built things that I thought would last forever. I was arrogant. I can admit that now. It happened on a Tuesday in November. A grey, unremarkable Tuesday. I remember the details with a clarity that hurts. I was in my office on the 24th floor. The air conditioning was humming that low, artificial drone that you stop hearing after a while. I was shouting at someone on the phone. A contractor, I think. He was late with a shipment of steel, and I was letting him know that his incompetence was costing me money. I remember feeling a tightness in my jaw. That wasn't unusual. I lived with a permanent knot of stress in my shoulders. I hung up the phone, slamming the receiver down, feeling that rush of adrenaline that I mistook for power. I stood up to walk to the window, to look out over the city I felt I owned a piece of. And then the room tilted. It wasn't painful at first. It was just wrong. The horizon line of the city skyline slanted sharply to the left. I remember reaching out for the edge of my mahogany desk, my fingers slipping on the polished wood. Then came the heat. It started in the center of my chest, like someone had lit a match inside my sternum. It flared outward, down my left arm, up into my neck. I tried to call out to my secretary, Sarah, who sat just outside the glass doors. But when I opened my mouth, no sound came out. Just a dry, rasping wheeze. The pain hit a second later, and it was absolute. It felt like a sledgehammer shattering my ribcage. I fell. I didn't crumble gracefully. I hit the floor hard. I remember the smell of the carpet, commercial cleaner, and dust. I was staring at the underside of my leather chair. I felt a profound sense of embarrassment. I thought, I can't be seen like this. Get up, Marcus. Get up. But I couldn't move. The crushing weight on my chest was immovable. My vision started to tunnel. The edges of the room turned black, creating a vignette around the legs of the furniture. I heard the glass door slide open. I heard Sarah scream my name. Her voice sounded underwater, distorted and slow. Marcus. Oh my God. Marcus. I wanted to tell her to stop screaming, to call an ambulance quietly, but the darkness was closing in fast. The heat in my chest turned to ice. It was a cold so deep it burned. Then the noise stopped. The humming of the air conditioner. The distant traffic. Sarah's frantic voice. It all just cut out. Silence. I was standing up. That was the first thing I realized. I was standing next to the window. The pain was gone. The crushing weight was gone. I felt lighter than I had in 20 years. I took a deep breath, and the air felt crisp, almost electric. I turned around, confused. If I was standing here, why was Sarah kneeling on the floor? I walked toward her. Sarah, what is it? I asked. She didn't answer. She was frantically fumbling with her phone, her hands shaking. I looked down to see what she was looking at. I saw a man lying on the floor. He was wearing my suit. He had my greying hair, my watch. His face was turning a pale, waxy blue. His eyes were open, staring blindly at the ceiling. It took me a moment to process the impossible. That was me. That was my body. I wasn't scared yet. I was fascinated. It was like looking at a mannequin. I felt no attachment to it. It looked like a discarded overcoat. I realized with a jolt of pure clarity, that I was not inside that meat and bone anymore. My consciousness, the thing that is me, was hovering above the scene. Paramedics arrived. I don't know how much time had passed. Time felt slippery, irrelevant. I watched them work. I saw them cut open my expensive shirt. I saw the paddles. I saw my body jolt, clear. I felt a tug, like a hook in my navel, every time they shocked the body, but I resisted it. I didn't want to go back into that broken thing. I felt free. I was floating near the ceiling now, watching the chaos with a detached curiosity. I heard one of the paramedics say, "We're losing him." And I thought, "No, you're not. I'm right here." But then the scene began to fade. The office, the paramedics, the city window. It all dissolved like smoke in a strong wind. The light of the room dimmed. I turned away from my body. I expected to see a light. I had heard about the light. Everyone talks about the light. But there was no light. There was a grey fog. It rose up around me, thick and damp. The temperature dropped. The electric crispness of the air vanished, replaced by a smell that I can only describe as stagnant water and old copper. I started to walk, or glide. I wasn't using legs anymore. I was moving through this fog, and a heavy, oppressive feeling began to settle on my shoulders. It wasn't physical weight. It was emotional gravity. This is where the fear started. I wasn't crossing over into peace. I was drifting into something else. I called out, "Hello." My voice didn't echo. The fog swallowed the sound immediately. I kept moving, driven by an instinct to find a way out. The fog grew darker, shifting from grey to a charcoal black. And then I started to hear them. Whispers. Thousands of them. Low, muttering, angry voices. They were all around me, but I couldn't see anyone. They sounded frustrated. They sounded like I did when I was shouting at the contractor on the phone. Impatient. Selfish. Mine. Give it to me. Why won't you listen? It's mine. I realized with a sinking dread that I wasn't alone. I was walking into a crowd. But it wasn't a welcoming committee. I need you to understand something about the place I entered. When people say the word hell, we have these medieval ideas. We think of torturers, pitchforks, and lakes of fire. If only it were that simple. Physical pain is something you can understand. Physical pain has a limit. What I walked into was a realm of psychological and spiritual isolation that was far worse than any physical torture. The fog thinned just enough for me to see shapes, shadows. They were people, or what was left of people. They were hunched over, grey and indistinct, like sketches on bad paper. I drifted closer to a man, or the spirit of a man, who was standing near what looked like a phantom wall. He was pacing back and forth. His movements were jerky, frantic. He was muttering to himself over and over again. "I just need to check the numbers. Just let me check the numbers. Where is the ledger? I can fix it." I reached out to him. "Excuse me," I said. "Where are we?" He didn't even look up. He walked right through my hand. He was completely locked inside his own loop. He was obsessed. He was reliving some moment of anxiety, some obsession from his life on Earth, and he couldn't break free. I moved on. I saw a woman sitting on the ground, weeping. But it wasn't a weeping of sorrow, it was a weeping of rage. She was clutching something invisible in her hands. It's not fair. They took it. They took it. I realized then that these souls weren't being punished by a devil. They were punishing themselves. They were trapped in the states of mind they had died in. They were clinging to their anger, their greed, their jealousy, their addictions. And because they were no longer in a physical body, there was no sleep, no distraction, no television, no drink to numb it. There was only the obsession. The atmosphere was heavy with a cold, sticky dread. It felt like walking through a crowded room where everyone hates each other but refuses to leave. I began to panic. Why am I here? I thought. I'm a successful man. I'm a builder. I'm not a criminal. But as soon as I had that thought, The environment responded. That's the thing about the afterlife, or at least this part of it. It reacts to your thoughts. Your internal state becomes your external reality. When I thought about my success, the fog shifted. I suddenly saw a reflection of my life, but it wasn't the shiny version I put on my resume. It was the truth. I saw myself ignoring my wife's calls to stay late at the office. I saw myself cutting corners on safety inspections to save a few $1,000s. I saw the arrogance in my face when I fired people. I saw the walls I had built around my heart. The warning was becoming clear. I was in this place because I belonged here. I had spent 46 years building a hell of isolation and self-interest on Earth, and now I had moved into it permanently. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I wasn't a victim. I was a volunteer. I started to run. I didn't know where I was running to, but I had to get away from those muttering voices. The darkness seemed to stretch on forever. There was no horizon, no sky, just this endless, gloomy plane of existence where souls wandered in their own private prisons. I felt a terrifying loneliness. It was a cold that went right through the spirit. I realized that if I stayed here, I would eventually become like that man pacing the floor. I would forget who I was. I would forget love. I would just become a loop of my own ego. This is the hardest part to tell you. I felt the absence of God. It wasn't that God was angry at me. It was that I had spent my life turning my back on the light. So now, in death, I was facing the dark. I had walked so far away from connection that I couldn't find my way back. If you are listening to this and you feel that tightness in your chest, not the heart attack, but the tightness of stress, of anger, of holding on to grudges, please take a breath. That weight you carry, it doesn't vanish when you die. It gets heavier. I stopped running. I fell to my knees in that dark void. I had no leverage, no money, no connections here. I was bankrupt in the only currency that mattered. I did the only thing left to do. I gave up. I surrendered. I screamed out into the darkness. I didn't scream for a doctor. I didn't scream for my wife. God, I screamed, help me. I was wrong. It wasn't a religious prayer. It was a primal admission of failure. It was the first honest thing I had said in years. And then the darkness rippled. When I screamed, the vibration of my voice seemed to tear the fabric of that dark place. It wasn't immediate, but something changed. Far above me, in the infinite black ceiling of that void, a pinprick of light appeared. It was tiny at first, like a distant star, but it was moving fast. It was coming for me. As it descended, the grey fog began to boil away. The muttering souls around me recoiled. They shrank back into the shadows, terrified of the brightness. They chose the dark because the light revealed too much. But I stayed on my knees. I kept my eyes fixed on that point of brilliance. It grew larger, expanding until it wasn't just a light, but a presence. It hit me like a wave. If the darkness was cold isolation, this was the opposite. It was a tsunami of connection. A being of light stood before me. I say being, but it didn't have a human face. It was a silhouette of pure, radiant energy, brighter than the sun, but easy to look at. And then, the communication began. It wasn't words. It was a direct transfer of knowledge. Telepathy doesn't quite cover it. It was more like remembering. This presence knew me. It knew everything I had ever done, every thought I had ever had. And here is the shock. There was no judgment. I expected anger. I expected to be condemned for the selfish life I had led. But there was no condemnation. There was only absolute, heartbreaking compassion. The light looked at my life, the greed, the anger, the neglect, and it felt sadness for me. It saw my pain, even the pain I had hidden from myself. Marcus, the presence seemed to vibrate inside my mind. Look at what you built. Suddenly, I was in a life review, but it wasn't linear. I experienced it all at once. I was back in my office, shouting at the contractor. But this time, I wasn't just Marcus. I was the contractor. I felt his humiliation. I felt the stress he was under, trying to feed his family. I felt the sting of my own arrogance hitting him. Then I was in my living room, ignoring my wife. I felt her loneliness. I felt the coldness radiating off my back as I stared at my laptop. I felt her heart breaking, slowly, over years. I saw the ripple effect of my life. Every harsh word I spoke sent a wave of negativity out into the world. But I also saw the few moments of kindness I had forgotten. I saw a time I helped a stranger pick up dropped groceries. That small spark of light was huge here. It was the only thing that had value. The being of light showed me the truth, and this is the revelation, the warning I brought back. It showed me that life on earth is a school. We are here to learn one thing: how to turn fear into love. That's it. Everything else, the careers, the money, the status, is just the classroom setting. The warning was this: you take yourself with you. The light communicated to me: you are building your home in the afterlife with every brick you lay in your physical life. If you build with anger, you will live in anger. If you build with love, you will live in love. I realized I had spent 46 years building a prison. I don't want to go back to the dark, I pleaded. The thought of that cold, grey place terrified me more than anything. The light enveloped me. You do not have to. You called out. That is enough. I felt a washing sensation. It was as if 40 years of grime were being scrubbed off my soul. I felt lighter, cleaner. I felt loved. For the first time in my life, I felt truly, unconditionally loved. I wanted to stay. I wanted to merge with this light and never think about steel or concrete again. I felt a sense of home that I had never found in any house I built. Can I stay? I asked. Please, just let me stay. The light paused. There was a sensation of gentle refusal. It is not your time, Marcus. You have more to build, but this time you must build differently. I tried to argue. I can't go back. My body is broken. I'm dead. You are returning, the light insisted. You have a warning to give. Tell them that the separation is an illusion. Tell them that what they do to others, they do to themselves. I felt a pull. It was violent this time. Gravity was clawing at me. The beautiful warm light began to recede. No! I shouted. Don't send me back! But the command had been given. The universe swirled around me. The grey fog, the dark void, the hospital room. It all rushed toward me at the speed of light. The return to the body was the most painful experience of my existence. Imagine taking a vast, expanding consciousness, something that fits the size of the universe, and jamming it into a tiny, dense, cold container. I slammed back into my body with a gasp. My eyes flew open. The light in the room was blindingly harsh. Fluorescent tubes, the smell of antiseptic. The noise was deafening, beeping monitors, voices, the rush of air. I arched my back off the bed. My chest felt like it had been kicked by a horse. My ribs ached from the CPR. My throat was raw from the intubation tube they were pulling out. "He's back! We've got a rhythm!" someone shouted. I tried to speak, but I just choked. Tears were streaming down my face, not from the pain, but from the loss. I had lost the light. I was back in the heavy, slow, dense world of matter. I felt the weight of gravity pressing me into the mattress, and I felt the weight of my personality. Marcus, the arrogant developer, trying to latch back onto me. But I wasn't him anymore. Not really. The recovery was slow. I spent 3 weeks in the hospital. The doctors called it a widowmaker heart attack. They said it was a miracle I had survived without brain damage, considering how long I was gone. They talked about stents and diet and stress management. They talked about cholesterol. I listened, but I knew the real problem wasn't my arteries. It was my soul. When my wife, Elena, came into the room for the first time, I saw her. I really saw her. I didn't see the woman who nagged me about dinner plans. I saw a spirit of light who had been patient with a blind man for 20 years. I grabbed her hand. I couldn't speak much yet, but I squeezed her hand and I wept. I think she was terrified. She had never seen me cry. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm so sorry." She thought I was apologizing for the heart attack. But I was apologizing for the last 2 decades. Life after the event was difficult. Everything looked different. I went back to the office 3 months later, but I couldn't do it. I looked at the blueprints, and they looked like meaningless scratches. The ambition was gone. The hunger to own more was gone. I sold my share of the partnership. My colleagues thought I had brain damage. They thought the lack of oxygen had made me soft. Maybe it did. I realized that the warning I received wasn't just for me. It was for everyone. We are sleepwalking toward a cliff. We think we can live in bubbles of selfishness and that it won't matter in the end. But I saw the grey fog. I saw the isolation. I know where that road ends. I changed my life completely. I still work in construction, but now I build affordable housing. I use my skills to help people who have nothing. It doesn't pay well, and I drive a used car now, but I don't care. When I walk onto a site now, I look the workers in the eye. I ask them how they are. I listen. Because I know that every interaction is a spiritual transaction. I am building my reality for the next world, right now, in every conversation. I am not afraid of death anymore. I know the light is waiting. I know the love that is there. But I am also not in a rush to go back, because I have work to do here. The warning is simple, and I leave it with you now. Do not wait until you die to see the truth. Don't wait until the darkness comes to look for the light. The hell I saw was real, but it was self-created. And the heaven I saw was real, and it is open to everyone. Look at your life. Look at how you treat people. If you died today, would you be able to stand the reflection of your own soul? If the answer is no, fix it. Fix it now. You are still breathing. You still have time. Don't waste it.